Hey, welcome to the Richey Mortgage Team podcast, powered by the Velocity team at Click and Close. And this is actually part 2 of last week's podcast with the great Gary Richey, aka my dad, aka Obi-Wan of the real estate industry. And so Dad, let's get back into it real quick, because when we left off last, you were finishing the story of how you and my mom, Peggy Richey, had joined Jan Richey at Keller Williams as one of the first agents of the Dallas Preston Road office. So elaborate on that again. So mom makes you move everything 2 days before Christmas. You guys go over to the Preston Road. You sit down with Jan Richey, Tom Lanphier. You guys are drinking champagne out of plastic Dixie cups sitting on the floor. And at that point, you guys are saying what to yourselves? All right, did we join a great real estate organization, or is this kind of a fly-by-night that's not going to pan out? What was the thought process going through? Well, I know you basically just do what most husbands do and say, yes, dear. But what was going through your mind at that point?
Well, I thought she had basically lost it because she was leaving a very prestigious agency, and it still is in the Dallas-Fort Worth market, Abbey Holiday, and jumping into something that, quite honestly, nobody had ever heard of before. But based on the fact that Mike Brody, who at the time, I think he was either the past president or the current upcoming president to be of the National Association of Realtors. So, and everybody, who's been in the real estate business in Dallas-Fort Worth has heard of Mike Brody.
Mm-hmm.
He was one of the principals and founders of the Plano Keller Williams office, but it was, shall we say, spawned or generated out of the Dallas Preston Road location. And so I of course I said, okay, whatever, the key thing is, because once Peggy made up her mind, it wasn't a matter of whether or not, it was when. So she went over there, hit the ground running, and bear in mind, she left. She had 4 contracts due to close. She had about 8 or 9 listings and 6 buyers she was working with. But at the time, we didn't have buyer representation in effect the way that it is now. We were supposed to have them sign a buyer rep agreement, but these buyers went over with her. But her office manager was so incensed by Peggy moving that they didn't release any of the transactions she had due to close. They gave her like the equivalent of what was called a referral fee, which really kind of lit a fire under her. And so she went full out for about the next 18 to 24 months. And I think she produced either 14 or $16 million her first year at KW, which effectively was 1994. So she was one of the top producing or top 20 agents in the company and part of the founding nucleus, along with Jan, along with 2 or 3 other people in our office. And then, we were there already whenever they recruited Gene and Susan Frederick, who were a husband and wife team, Dee Dee and Steve Trosclair, who basically are still with Keller Williams, but now Dee Dee's a regional or retired regional director. So we were kind of the founders of the KW system there. Other than Jimmy and Linda McKissick, who were in Denton, they had an office. And then I think there was a Fort Worth office, but they were not following the KW business model, or what Gary Keller described as how he would like his market centers to operate. So oddly enough, for the first year to year and a half, Gary Keller himself would come up and do and teach and train and deliver. And it was 2 or 3 times a year. It wasn't just on occasion, because he was a great teacher, trainer, and educator. He would come up personally and do the classes for us to kind of, like, for lack of it, we call it Kellerize, his agents, and keep us all fired up, because Hey, quite honestly, nobody had ever heard of Keller Williams. They didn't know what it was. They thought maybe, hey, they called the number Keller Williams thinking that, is it Kelly Moore just bought out Sherwin-Williams or vice
Right.
versa? And it was a paint
Right.
company. And can we get wallpaper there?
Sure.
That was kind of a joke that went around the office for a while until, we got dead dog serious. 1995, 96, 97 were kind of recovery years. We were coming out of the impact that the, shall we say, market shift happened in the early 80s. It took about 12 or 13 years for us to get out of that cluster because it was a big mess. And it, through the real estate industry, that's when we had all the foreclosures, all the, assumptions for FHA and VA. They were
Right.
called subject to assumptions, meaning, the original owner who originated the note was still subject to and liable for repayment if the person they let assume it went into default. Well,
Oh,
a
wow.
lot of those went into default, and that's when we had that huge tsunami of foreclosure properties that people were paying, 20, 30, as little as 10 cents on the dollar to buy those properties from the federal, for whoever foreclosed on them. They were all deed of trust. And so, it took us a while to overcome that tsunami of, foreclosure. So everything and everybody relates to, and you personally know that basically 2007 and 8, was a repeat, but this time it was all the lenders that went under,
Right.
all the loan servicing companies that went under. And, we kind of weathered that too. But the key thing is that historically Keller Williams was at the right place at the right time.
So,
And they grew exponentially because they had, a different business model of capping the amount that you pay your broker. That was unheard of at the time, meaning basically what you had to do is produce enough real estate to pay the Keller Williams royalty and whatever the market center share was, which at that time was $18,000. So once you had generated, and that was taken out of the 20%, they gave the agents 80%, and that was brand new agents all the way up to top producing. Now, they made a special deal with most of the top producing agents to make their split larger. So at one time, your mom was on a 90-10 split. And
wow.
that's because they knew she would hit the cap, but she would hit it too quickly. So she, her second year, she hit her cap, within 4 months of her anniversary date. And so she was 100% agent for the rest of the year. Well, the market center was based on a business model of getting a little bit of income from each producing agent that hadn't capped yet.
Mm-hmm.
And the ones that capped sooner or faster, i.e., the top producers, basically they could cap in 60 days, and that was not good as far as the cash flow goes for the market center because
Right.
most of those agents basically paid their cap off so quickly that the market center didn't get to share or spread the revenue over a 12-month period. So, and why I go into this is because, just like everything else, Peggy kind of got a burr under her saddle and she says, well, I think we need to open a market center. And I went, okay. So what makes you think that? She says, well, I've been saving up some funds and so forth and so on, which she did. And she says, I think that we need to buy a franchise and open a market center. And I says, well, what's wrong with what we're doing right now? She says, well, I want you to get a little bit more involved in the Keller Williams model instead of just referring your clients, past clients to me and, supporting me. And, the joke was basically, whenever anybody asked me, he says, are you a real estate agent too? And I said, yes, but I'm a member of the Peggy Richey team. And, I'm primarily her exterior marketing director. And they kind of get this curious look on their faces. Exterior marketing director. I said, it's a real fancy title that I whipped up for myself. Basically, I'm her sign boy because I have a
Yeah,
pickup truck and I get to put the signs in the yard because they're big steel frames and the signs get mud and scratch up the trunk of her car. And she just didn't want to have to mess with it. Besides, she only weighed about 105 pounds
right.
and she couldn't get the sign to go in the ground.
Yeah,
She
because
carried a jug
she
of
didn't have enough
water in
body
the back
weight.
of the truck so
Yeah,
she could water down the area where she was going to be putting her
you
signs.
were
And then
you were
pretty
the
soon
honeydew.
she just turned that responsibility totally over to me. I said, "Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that." But I
Yeah,
also went on various and sundry aspects of her transactions. Like I went to all of her property inspections with her real estate inspectors because I knew more about the building code than the
sure.
average agent because I'd been remodeling and building stuff for the previous 10 or 15 years. And so that took a great deal of pressure off of her. So she did not have to carve out 1 or 2 or 3 hours of her day to go meet her clients. And it also gave me an opportunity to interact with our clients as the Peggy Richey husband and wife team, so forth. So it was a really good fit and it was working really well. But
Yeah, so hold on, let me touch on that real quick. So that goes back to, some of the things that I've been coached on, and we try to coach people on now is basically you filled in the gaps for mom so that
yeah,
she could spend more of her valuable time on money making activities,
right,
basically generating business. And so, that also goes to, which was, I'll be honest with you, it's been a very big challenge for me over my career is to letting go and delegating
mm-hmm,
some of the smaller things. We say them smaller, but they're required. You have to do
right,
them. It's not rocket science, but it has to be done so that you can focus on the money making activities in regards
absolutely,
to marketing, exteriorly, meeting with agents, meeting with clients and things of that nature. Some of the things that gets lost in the shuffle because you get you as a agent or a mortgage person or even anyone that's 100% commission, you get stuck behind emails and voicemails and answering phone calls
right,
as opposed to making outbound phone calls and continuing to grow the business. And so
right,
I think it's a very great point that you make that you received the byproduct of success because you helped mom with the success thing real quick.
exactly.
Before we get into the marketing share piece, I want to go back to real quick back to the story that I just learned about a year ago. So I used to always say mom was like one of the top, I don't know, 50 agents at Keller Williams. And you actually educated me and said, it's more like she was like one of the top 20.
Right,
And then you took it a step farther and you said, well, hey, she's on the cover. She's on the inside the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book. And I was
right.
like, what? And I was like, so first of all, tell the story about mom being in the book, but more importantly, tell the interesting story of how Keller got the book published.
Yeah, it was a lot of people don't know the history, but we do because what happened after we joined KW in the late 90s, Keller started recognizing that there were several things. Well, he knew this before, but then he started taking action on that as early as I think 1996 or 97. He started inviting the top producing, I'd say top 20 or 30 producing agents down to Austin for what he called mastermind groups so that he could compare what everybody was doing nationwide, not just what was working in Texas, but what was working in the industry. And he found that there were stark similarities of all the top producing agents in the country. And he thought it was a great idea to get together, share ideas, have meetings, and it would be like a 1 day deal. And we would all come into Austin and go to these meetings. And he had somebody, that was there at first, the first few meetings. These went on for 2 to 2.5 years.
So hold on. So at the time of this, Gary Keller started the masterminds. Was anybody else doing that, or was he kind of the pioneer of that
I think he
concept?
was he was kind of the groundbreaker for that idea
Okay.
with masterminding
Which
and
which is
sharing.
which is a brilliant idea, and you see so many companies now doing it, right? I mean,
But
but Gary Keller was the pioneer of that.
here is the downside of that. A
Okay.
lot of top producing agents didn't want to participate because why would I want to tell everybody else my secrets
Sure.
of why I'm so successful? And they use them and compete directly against me. And so there was kind of some, friction about that.
Sure.
But
Makes
Gary
sense.
kind of dispelled that. And he said, hey, here's the situation. Since you're a top producing agent and you know what you do, but you don't know what anybody else does, if you get one really great idea that will help boost your production by 5, 10, or even 20 transactions per year, is it worth it? And so he kind of convinced us all, because before that period of time, top producing agents wouldn't tell you what they were doing. They really
Right.
wouldn't, because they didn't want you to take their business model and develop it and compete directly with them. So, but we didn't really mind, because most of the mastermind members were from other locales across the country, and they weren't going to be in direct competition. In fact, it worked quite the opposite. Anytime we had somebody going to, Kansas City, Missouri, we would refer them to John and Judy Johns, which was the top producing husband and wife team in that market center area.
Yeah, and then you guys felt good about referring them because you'd met and talked to these other agents. You knew what they were about. You knew what you'd expect, and so you could trust them. And it goes back to the whole thing of what we like people do business with, the people they like, know, and trust.
Absolutely.
And now you trust these folks, and you felt good about giving a referral.
Sure. And we meet with them face to face. As it was, it turned into a couple of times a year, and then it went to quarterly. And this was still in the 90s. And so I think after about the first 3 or 4 mastermind groups that we got into, we saw the value of developing relationships with top or like-minded professionals in other parts of the country to develop a great network for referrals. So that always added extra money. Whether you realize it or not, your mom usually got anywhere from $90,000 to $100,000 a year in referral fees by referring people who were relocating out of the Dallas-Fort Worth area to maybe Arizona, maybe New Mexico, maybe Kansas City, Missouri, Chicago, Atlanta, things like that. So,
and this was really in the mid '90s, right?
So what happened is Gary brought a guy by the name of Jay Papazan into the mastermind groups to start making notes and recordings and things like that. He introduced Jay. I don't think Jay was in the real estate business at that time. He was a ghostwriter, so to speak. And he says, I thought it'd be a good idea to bring somebody who had professional publishing history to make sure that we take notes, we record the sessions, we don't miss any of this valuable information that's being shared. And so this went on for about, the next 8 or 9 months or a year. Pretty soon we would have mastermind meetings, a big one, where all the top producers from across the nation in Keller Williams, because we were exponentially growing at that time, would meet at family reunion, and we'd all get in a room together and spend half a day at least sharing these ideas. Jay would be recording, Gary would be talking, he'd be interviewing top producing teams. He didn't just stand in front of the room and talk the whole time. He was asking people to share what they did that worked in their area. So we were all gaining knowledge and getting new ideas about lead generating, because he says, your job, quite honestly, is not selling real estate. Your job, the number one job, is generating new leads so that, and we're talking about quality, qualified buyers,
marketing.
And so you will always have a consistent stream of business to work with, because before that, the market was kind of like agents would do what good agents would work, do all these lead generating activities. They would develop a whole bunch of new prospects, and they would start showing the prospects and stop lead generating. And so they would close all their transactions, and they get through with their last closing, and then all of a sudden they don't have anything on the books. Right. So they start lead generating again, and they start up and start lead generating, and it was like this.
Yeah, roller coaster. Yeah, we may or may not talk about that on a daily basis in our business here. So, but
the key to that is you never stop lead generating. That's your primary focus, and you can hire people to show people houses. Well, Peggy already kind of had that because she had, you remember the twins that she had, the two sisters as showing agents, so the kid, Cindy and Christy, they were showing associates, and Peggy paid them part of their commission. And, just to show some of the buyers she didn't have time to work with. She brought them over to the KW business model with her. So she already had that idea of, hey, I don't have time to work with everybody.
Yeah, she may have brought over she might have brought over my wife for a little bit, Janae Richey, to do the same thing.
Janae was in the mix at the time too. Then what happened is, while we were doing all this masterminding stuff, one family reunion meeting where we had all of us in the same room, and I think there was about 100 to 150 of us at that time. Gary says, okay. He says, I've got all of these ideas, and I think we need to put them together in a usable format and use it to help teach and train the new people getting into the business so that they don't go through this roller coaster income thing. And understand what their true job is. Now, he says, yes, you're all real estate professionals. You're knowledgeable about this, that, and the other thing. But real estate agents typically didn't realize what their really job was to generate leads. So he said, I think we'll put it together in a manual, and then we can publish it in a book, and I'll give you, it's up to you guys because this is your information. He said, quite honestly, and this, I'll never forget when he said this. He said, we can put it in a manual after it's published and keep it within Keller Williams and dynamically change the face of our system and our industry inside of Keller Williams. Or we can publish it in a book, share it with the world, and dramatically change the systems and what really, really, truly works for an entire industry. So, but he said, if you want it, it's your information. You tell me what you want me to do. Jay's a ghostwriter. He's familiar with publishing and so forth. He'll put it all together in a usable format that pretty well generally is simple to communicate because somebody new to the business doesn't understand some of our terminology. So we all sit there and so forth, so on. And basically, without one dissenting vote, everybody said, I think you should publish it and share it with the world, period. And Gary says, okay, but I just wanted you guys to, acknowledge that that's what you think we need to do. And then he started seeking a publishing company that would publish the book. And he talked to, all these big publishers in New York, some in Chicago, some on the West Coast. Nobody was interested in, we don't need another real estate self-help book. So Keller said, okay.
Right.
Well, he got together with some of the business partners he had, and Keller Williams was doing very well at the time in the late 90s. And he said, so what if I, meaning Gary Keller, open my own publishing company to publish this book? And everybody said, well, that's a kind of a big risk and so forth and so on. And he asked Jay and some of the other people that he'd been working with, he says, well, what does it take to get on the New York Times bestseller list? And they said, well, you have to sell basically at least 100,000 copies of the book within the first year of its original publication. He says, okay, that's fine. So he comes back to us again and he said, here's what we're up against, team. So Keller's smart. He's very, very smart.
Maybe.
Nobody wants to publish it. So I've decided to open my own publishing company and publish the first 200,000 copies. But I need every top producing agent in this room and team leader to commit that you'll order at least 10 cases, 12 books in a case, 10 cases of books for your market center or your recruiting purposes. And we
And
had
he did
about,
this at a mastermind, or where did he come to you guys and say this?
it was in a mastermind group.
Okay, and how many people were? How many agents, top level agents, were there?
It's about 100 to 120.
Okay,
It was at a family reunion when he made this announcement.
So 120 agents had to buy 10 cases of books, which
at
was
12 books at 12 books per case. He says that will automatically put us on the New York Times bestseller list, and people will stand up and start paying attention.
wow.
Brilliant marketing strategy. So we all said, sure, we'll order 10 cases. We didn't care, as long as we get them at the retail wholesale price. And he says, and great, and this is going to be a great recruiting tool, because somebody sitting across the table from you that's brand new in the business, doesn't know anything about it, and say, hey, we have a step-by-step guide of how the top 5% of the agents in the United States do their business, where they start, what they do, how they do it, step by step. And we call it. And then he said, then we argued about what do we call the damn thing? And he said, okay. It all of a sudden came to him. He and Jay, I think Jay came up with the idea. He says, well, most of the people that we deal with in the top 5%, or, the top 150 to 200 agents, all of them are just on the verge of being millionaires as far as assets and so forth and so on.
Sure.
He said, so why don't we call it the millionaire real estate agent? That'll get somebody's attention if they want to be a millionaire in the real estate business. And so that was another stroke of brilliance, what to call it. And then whenever he came out and published the first, I think it's 200 to 250,000 copies. And if you have a copy of the original book, and I have it, it says on the inside front cover, published by Relic Publishing. And they said, who the hell is Relic Publishing? And Gary Keller says, well, I couldn't think of a real creative name, so it's Keller spelled backwards. Relic. RELLECK.
There you go.
God, and so once we did that, once the book hit the bestsellers list, then all these publishers started blowing up Gary Keller's phone. What does your book say? What about this? What about that? We'd like to buy the rights, this, that, and the other thing. So I think, it's either McGraw-Hill or somebody like that.
Yeah,
paid Gary a huge
it's McGraw-Hill. Yeah.
For publishing it. And then he gets a royalty on every copy. So, and we still, to this day, Clint, hand out a copy of that to our new recruits. I give a personal copy to all of the people I recruit into our group down here in San Antonio. And I turn to, I think, about the 5th or 6th page of the book, where it's got 2 different photos of mastermind members who started the mastermind and helped develop the systems that are in the book. And Peggy's in the top photo. So, I said, this was my wife, who was part of these mastermind teams and groups. So I'm not just blowing smoke. I was really there when it happened.
The great part about that story is, and I tell it to my agents that I deal with now and I talk to, and first of all, the first thing that comes out of their mouth is wow. And then the second part of it is, I go, that just goes to show you that, at some point your kid's going to come back around and actually show you the respect that you deserve as not only a parent, but as a business person. Because I said, I didn't even know this story until I was 50 years old, because it just didn't even matter to me. It wasn't the time in my life where I really cared about any of that. But, one of the most important reasons, I wanted you to be on this podcast, aside from the fact that I love you more than life itself, is I wanted you to share these stories, because I think it's prevalent in not only the real estate industry, but the mortgage business or anything where, you're 100% commissioned and you're trying to figure out like, what's the great secret sauce? What's the magic bullet theory? What's the great white elephant? There is none. It's just, putting the time and the effort in consistently
Mhm.
and diligently and having the undesired, unquestionable thirst to be successful and just keep pushing forward. And the byproduct is like Gary Keller. Now he's a New York Times best-selling author, which that was never even the goal of the book to begin with. He was
No.
just trying to have something, because obviously there weren't podcasts back then, where just something to record the brilliance of the most successful agents in America. And so,
Mhm.
just you do the right thing and you do the right activities, you get the byproduct. Um,
Well, that initial publishing, Clint, spawned a whole explosion of, real estate education books. Right after that, there was a lot of the top producing agents that were, well, okay, so how do you invest your money? And so forth. Well, we buy real estate, and so forth and so on. And so he followed that up by having mastermind groups with the agents that were also real estate investors and some of their property management contacts. And he came right out, I'd say within 12 to 18 months. It was a blue cover book that's called The Millionaire Real Estate Investor. And then after that, it kind of, because we were going through changes in 2005, 6, and 7, you remember the real estate market was easy. We couldn't get a new loan app in because everybody was so busy refinancing everything, doing
Sure.
refi. So basically, he said things are going to shift or they're going to change. You need to be aware of what they're going to do when they're going to do it. So he wrote a follow-up book called Shift, SHIFT,
Sure.
the real estate shift, which we are going through another shift right now.
We are.
So, and then, there were several other publications. He quite honestly told us he wrote the book the one thing that's the most important thing that you need to focus on above and beyond anything else in your life, not just your real estate life, but your professional and personal life. And he said, I said, well, where did you get the idea for that? The one. He says, what happened is, to tell that story, he said, and he told it to a mastermind group when it came out with the one. He said, quite honestly, we have a tendency to focus on 17 different things at the same time. And we don't really pick out the one thing that really motivates us the most and keeps us true to our, shall we say, disciplines and what we do and how we do it. So
Let me see if I can answer this before you give me the sage advice. It's the why.
Why am I doing this? And whether it be to make $1 million or, provide my family with this or, support, give all my children college educations, whatever, it's the one and most important thing, because he says, here's what everybody has to face the reality of. He says, we can't take any of this with us. Ultimately, where we're going to go, this stuff
Stays here.
and what we do is going to stay here. So you can choose to be remembered or not remembered by who? Your family or the people who are most important to you because of what you did and the legacy you left them when you got your ultimate reward. So, and that was kind of, shall we say, interesting, because at that point in time, Gary started losing people who had helped him develop Keller Williams. And, one of the closest people that he had was a friend of his that was an accountant that developed the KW reporting and systems and figured out the profit sharing free. That is hugely complicated. But that guy passed away. And Gary said, okay, I need to write this book.
Sure.
And basically, it's like you said, Curly said, in City Slickers, the one thing and why I'm a cowboy and I do this and put up with all this thing is the why. Why am
Sure.
I doing this? Because we all have a role in life. It's whether or not we choose to play that role or get influenced by, the latest trend or what's currently acceptable socially and things like that. You
Right.
stick to it no matter what. And that's ultimately what we're all trying to do, is leave a legacy for our children, our grandchildren, maybe their children,
Sure.
if you're lucky enough to have great grandchildren before you get your ultimate award. Now, of course, Peggy, she passed away in 2012. But here's the situation. She left a legacy, a why, that's going to benefit your kids.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to benefit other people and things of that nature. So that's what we're here for, is to make a difference while we're doing our business and supporting ourselves on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
Everybody asks me, well, I've been a teacher at Champions since spring of 2001. I was invited by Rita Santa Maria to come in and just give it a try, see how it worked out. We didn't really know. So, and 23, almost 24 years later, I'm still doing it. Why? Because I love getting in a room full of people and helping them discover and remember and focus on the things that are important. Now, my primary class that I teach and have taught for 23 years, and I've taught it to, I used to say thousands, and then I used to say tens of thousands, but now I think it's closer to hundreds of thousands.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Hey,
What?
so hold on real quick. So let me interject this, because I think it's very important that our podcast audience knows this about you. Obviously, you're my dad, but more
Sure.
importantly, I've developed even more respect because you and I probably don't talk, but maybe once every 2 or 3 weeks now,
Yeah.
because we're both busy, we got our lives, and that's just how it is. But people, there's that old adage, cliche that says, you basically have two deaths, right? You die when you leave the earth, your body goes to heaven, or your soul goes to heaven,
Sure.
and then your second death is when when someone stops saying your name or talking about you, right?
Sure.
And so, one of the greatest joys for me, and one of my proudest moments, obviously aside from my kids and stuff like that, but one of my proudest moments is when I talk to agents that I do business with, and even ones that I, have never done a transaction with. I just run across them, and they bring you up, in regards to, and I'm not going to sugarcoat. They were like, if it wasn't for your dad and your father, taking his time to help mentor me and answer my questions, I wouldn't be in real estate. Or if it wasn't for, the education systems and the extreme productivity class that I took with your dad, I wouldn't be a successful agent, or I wouldn't be as nearly successful as now, or I wouldn't have my own office, or I wouldn't have been able to help as many people in the world. But it's because of your dad. So let's talk about that. First and foremost, how does that make you feel? And B, you created, you and one of your dear friends who's now at EXP created Extreme Productivity. Tell me
Mm-hmm.
what that program was about, and why, and how it benefits even agents today that are getting new into the business. So, first of all, tell when you hear people tell you that, I mean, what goes through your mind? I know you never did it because of you wanted the recognition or whatever, because you just do it like many of the successful agents that we bring on this podcast. They just
Yeah.
want to help. They just want to make a difference. They truly
Sure.
care about people first and foremost. But how does that make you feel?
Well, first of all, I mean, I'm like humbled by what you just said. People, invoking me as to helping them in some aspect of their business and industry, because, I don't think we ever realize the impact we have on people and how it plays out in their life in the future. Um, for many, many years, I taught those classes and did what I did because I enjoyed it. Now, extreme productivity, I became the director of education and information and productivity at Dallas Preston Road. Gene, Frederick, and Susan says, we're so busy managing 250 or 300 agents, we don't have time to teach classes anymore. So will you come over and do this? But since you're an instructor at Champions, you've probably already seen most of these people in one of your classes. And I said, yeah. And so Gene came up to me one day and he says, okay. So there was this program that we used to enroll in called Sweat Hogs, that was a accountability, productivity specific class to generate leads.
It was Sweat Hogs
6 weeks.
Hey, was Sweat Hogs, is that an acronym for same way every time, or is that just like sweat as in hard work sweat?
Yeah. Sweating, doing the things that you need to do, quite honestly. Yeah, activities every single day. It's like working out. Okay. But you're working out your business muscles, not your physical being.
Sure.
But so I said, okay. So he said, okay, let's put this thing together and we'll do it in like 6 or 7 weeks, and we'll have different themes and different activities, and we'll have teams that we'll divide them up into, and so forth and so on. And so I think the first one we started was in 2003. We called it, Gene says, what are we going to call this thing? And I said, why don't we call it extreme productivity? Because everything we're going to teach them is exactly that. It's going to what most agents consider extreme to generate new leads, new relationships, and new business. And he says, okay, that sounds good. And so we did these modules. And first of all, it was like, we divided people up. There was about, I think, there was about 60 in the first extreme productivity class. And we only did this in Dallas Preston Road. Okay. We didn't do it anywhere else at that time. And we divided those 60 people into 3 teams of 20 each. Okay. And we purposely did not put people that were already in a pretty comfortable relationship together. We separated and put them on separate teams. So it would create a little bit of an air of discomfort and competition. So then we would give them kind of a motivating hour-long or hour-and-a-half-long class, give them some scripts or some ideas of what to say when you run into somebody that you don't know, so forth and so on. And then, meeting a stranger, you can initiate a conversation, standing in line to wait out to check out at a grocery store. And, they said, well, how do you do that? I never talk to anybody when I'm standing in line. I said, first of all, you need to be wearing what? Your ID of who you work for, your name tag, so that they know automatically who you are. You're in a real estate business. And then second of all, you don't make the conversation about you. So they said, well, how do we do that? And I said, well, it's something as simple as, you look at something in their basket while you're standing in line. You say, excuse me, I've always been curious about that particular product. How do you like that? Do you really, is it really, really good or whatever? Does it take? And then you start talking about a product in their basket. Then you start talking about them. They say, oh, you're in the real estate business. Yeah, so forth. Have been and have been in the business XYZ. It eventually comes around to where, basically you're going to ask them the magic question. So if you ever have any questions about real estate, do you currently own a home? They said, yeah, we live over here and so forth. I said, okay, so when you just got your tax reevaluation, did you think it was a little bit high? And they go, well, yeah, we were shocked about how much they appreciated our taxes and so forth. And I said, you can protest that. And we can give you the comparables of the other homes in your neighborhood that have recently sold and closed, and maybe you can protest it and bring that evaluation down. And they go, really? I said, yeah, can just give me your email address and I'll send it to you. Boom. What did I just get?
Yeah, you got a lead.
Contact information.
Yeah.
I said, do you have a cell phone? Yeah, give me that number too. I won't call and bug you for useless nonsense, but I'd be glad to run you a CMA so you can go protest your taxes. And it started over talking about what? a
Something in
power
the
drink
basket.
or something in their back basket. It's not what you say, it's how you say it. And if it's always within a giving attitude, expecting nothing in exchange,
Right.
then you've taken the first step to develop trust with that stranger. Okay,
Relationship.
so we give them
Relationship.
that, and then we say, okay, so let's go ahead and put this in practice. And they go, okay. He says, okay, so everybody, this is team A. We made them name their teams, like,
Right.
you know, lead, projectors or data miners or whatever. And so we would write their names up on the board. And he says, okay, so the lead projectors or prospectors, here's what we want you to do. We want you to take that script and this introduction, and we want you to all go to Collin Creek Mall, go to Frisco, go to the mall up in Frisco, go to, back in those days, there was a mall, it was before, I can't remember the name of the mall now, that was on LBJ over there by
Valley View.
Forest. Yeah.
Valley View.
Go. And we would send each team to a mall and said, for the next 3 hours, all we want you to do is meet everybody that you can possibly meet in that mall, use these scripts on them, and those that get the most names, telephone numbers, and email addresses is going to be the winning team. And they go, oh my God, they all had this look like horror. You slapped them with a mackerel in the face and so forth. Go on, it won't kill you. Nobody's died from lead generating yet. And so we would send them out and do that. And they would come back and say, we'll figure out who is the real true lead generating monsters of this particular session. We'll write them all up on the board and so forth, so on. And the winning team gets a prize, which is, every member of the team got a copy of the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book, or every member of the team got something, okay, right. Motivational. So,
and they didn't realize that they were also probably going to get something in their paycheck too. But
absolutely,
nevertheless,
here's what happened. At the end of that 6 or 8 weeks, doing these crazy, extreme things that nobody else would even dream of doing. We didn't send them out knocking on doors or making phone calls or anything like that at all. It was really out of the box stuff. And everybody thought me and Gene were crazy. So the key
how did you
a lot of credit.
Hey, how did you and Gene come up with these things?
We just generated it. We'd sit down and spend about an hour and a half or so, at the end of one extreme productivity class, said, what are we going to do next week? Because we had no plan. We just kind of developed it as we went along. And it turned into this productivity monster to where, here's what happened, Clint. At the end of the first extreme productivity class, those 60 agents increased their volume overall by almost 200%. That's nothing to sneeze at. And they were always talking about it and laughing. And, oh, yeah, we got kicked out by security at the mall, so we just stayed in the parking lot, and talked to people as they were going in. Where are you going? Where are you shopping? So they got even more creative than we thought they would.
Right.
So we closed another, I'd say, and Dallas Preston Road was pretty successful. But in that 6 weeks of activities, it resulted in about another $25 to $30 million in closed production for the market center. And so everybody who didn't get into it said, what'd you do? Where'd you go? Well, it's an extreme productivity thing, man. It really made a difference, and blah, 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 blah. They started talking about it. Then it got into Keller Williams, and they started talking about it. And I even flew to Memphis and did it to the market center in Memphis one time. So flew over there 8 weeks in a row, did extreme productivity, same results every single time. They increased their personal productivity and market center production exponentially. So that, quite honestly, when we started getting together for masterminds of teachers, instructors, and trainers, that ultimately became the initial business model for what they now have. It's called BOLD, BOLD.
Right.
So they took extreme productivity and kind of made it a little bit smoother, more polished, different kinds of presentations, still activities that most real estate agents won't do. And they put it in a format called Bold. And that's where the Bold class came from, probably.
Wow. Yeah, and see,
So
and if you and Gene would have patented that and put your name on it, you guys could be retired as it is. But at the end of the day,
that
like
wasn't why I did it.
I know, but that's what I was getting to. The point was that wasn't what your purpose was. Your purpose was to try to help people be successful.
Bingo. And have
Yeah,
some fun and generate some excitement and re-energize the market center, which it did. We had 4 more of those classes every year. And we had the second bowl class, we had 120 people in. So we had to come up with some different stuff, different activities. And we came up, and it was kind of like as the market was flowing, what we were doing. So, and they all resulted. Well, here's the deal. Whenever I started as productivity coach and educator at Dallas Preston Road, we had 256 agents. Gene showed me the real numbers. He said, last year, Susan and I recruited our butts off. We recruited 115 agents and we lost 97 due to lack of productivity.
right.
So he says, it's going to take us forever to grow this thing. So you need to do something. We need to do something to teach them what to do, how to do it, so they stay and we don't lose so many agents.
Increase the retention, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So I was there for 3.5 years as productivity specific coach. I even brought on another lady by the name of Jamie Leone, who was a Keller Williams agent. And she was a great educator as well to help take some of the load, because our new training education class had anywhere from 35 to 50 agents in it every week. And we didn't keep them in class all day. We had classes in the morning that last for 2.5 hours. And I said, go out and do what you need to do.
Sure.
And let me know how it worked. So,
right.
But the key is we went from 256 agents to 530 in 3 years.
Wow. And then
it got bigger from there.
Yeah, and a lot of that was because of the retention. So,
Mm-hmm.
well, let's do this, man. Obviously we still got way many more things to delve into, but as I've already told you, you've got a granddaughter that's chomping at the bit for her mother and I.
We don't want to disappoint her. I know.
Parents' weekend. So I'm going to put you on notice. You're going to have to be available again at some point here in the very near future, not 2 more years. Okay. But before I let you go, real simple. Based on what we talked about, is there anything that I didn't ask you that you wanted to touch on based on the stories that we've already gone through? Is there anything that you want to touch on?
Yeah, one thing that I've learned being active and licensed for 46 years and actively in the real estate business, I have never gotten out. I'm in it one way or the other, whether it's building something, reconstructing something. A lot of people don't know that I built 3 or 4 of the Champion School of Real Estate locations. I built the one on Maple Shade, I built the one on Austin, the one, in Fort Worth. I did the interior finish out for that because I was, still involved, but I was still in the real estate business and in, the teaching and the training industry. Here's what I would like everybody to remember. No matter what you do, stay focused, but only do the things that you are passionate about. Because here's this, and I use a very simple analogy. I'll close with this. You've heard this before. Don't do anything that's not fun. If it's not fun to you, you won't do it well. You'll procrastinate, put it off to the last minute, and so forth. And basically may not even do it at all. And it needs to get done. So whatever you think is not fun, if you can't hire somebody to do it for you, then figure out a way to make it more fun. Number 2, don't eat or drink anything that doesn't taste good. Why? Because, hey, if you put something in your mouth that doesn't taste good, you get this sour expression, you spit it out, you embarrass yourself, so forth and so on. Nobody wants to be involved with anybody that runs around all day with a sour expression on their face. True?
Yep, 100%.
So, Only do things that are fun. Only eat and drink things that taste good. Number 3, if you like 1 and 2, just do them over and over and over again. Life will find its purpose for you and you for it. I still, to this day, don't believe the impact that I've had on the real estate community in Dallas-Fort Worth, across Texas, until I get a letter every once in a while from a past student that took one of my classes at Champions or did this, that, and the other thing. And they say, I wanted to thank you for this, and this. I don't expect it. I don't anticipate it, but it's always well appreciated. I got a letter last week from somebody that said, I would have never passed my real estate test if you hadn't taken a personal interest and helped me understand what is real and what is not. In other words, don't just always have the right answer. Understand the why it's right. And once you understand the why, then you'll always make the right choices. I said, wow, that was pretty profound. And I got that from a student that was in my class 3.5 years ago. So now she's a RE/MAX agent, a top producer in, Corpus Christi of all places. So I teach to people all over the state. So.
Yeah. Well, look, like I said, you have a very servant heart. You always have, even to your detriment on some occasions. Because one of the things that always used to frustrate me growing up was I used to get mad because sometimes I think people take advantage of you because of your big heart, and as I got older it would frustrate me more. But now I know why you do it, because that's what makes you happy. That's your why, just like you said. So, but we're definitely going to have you back on here in the very near future, because you just have so many more things to share with the world, not only from the real estate perspective, but from just life in general, right? And like I said, it always comes from a good place where you truly are just trying to help people live their best life, which is, as a human being in the world we live in today, that's all you could ask for, right? Is try to do the right thing. The old golden rule, right? Treat people how you want to be treated, man. So thank you so much for popping on, Dad. Thanks for the 2 hours you've given us today. Look, as long as I know it took 2 years to get you on here, but it was well worth it.
Okay.
It's not going to take 2 more years, because I'm pinning you down. You're getting back on.
I'll be more available, I swear.
Yes,
I'm lightening up. I quit building stuff, so I've got a few extra minutes.
Yes,
so.
Good. Well, hey, folks out there that you want to definitely subscribe and like to the Richey Mortgage Team podcast, because you're going to get excellent advice and insight in not only to the real estate world itself, but just living life as well. And so like and subscribe to the podcast. And Dad, I know you still do recruiting, so if there's someone out there that said, I wish I could just talk to him and just ask him one question, or I want to know who he works for, how do the folks out there find you? What's your contact info?
Okay, so my contact information, and I'll give you my cell phone because I write it on the board every time I teach a Champions class. Since I'm located in the New Braunfels, San Antonio market area right now, it's 830-387-9405. That's my cell phone number. You can send me a text. You can call me. The only time I don't really answer it is when I'm doing a podcast or in a class. I usually put my phone on do not disturb, but don't just hang up. Leave me a voicemail or send me a text and let me know who you are, and I'll be happy to get back to you ASAP. My email address is very simple: Gary, GARY, as in Don or dog, Richey, RICHEY, @KW.com. And I'll be glad to help you. I'm still at the Champion School of Real Estate. I teach 4 or 5 classes a week there, simply because I have a lot of fun. In fact, I teach a night class in the New Braunfels Four Rivers Association this coming week. So, 5 nights in a row. So I'm available. don't hesitate to call. I'll be happy to talk to you about whatever. If you would like to hear more about our business model, things that we do that most brokers don't do, basically, we do a lot of hands-on mentorship. It's so much so that, if you're brand new to the business, you're scared, you don't know what to say, you get a lead to do a listing, I'll go on the listing presentation with you.
Yeah.
Now, I won't do it for the rest of your life. I'll do it the first 3 or 4 times till you get the hang of it. But at least you don't have to go in there and say, oh, I know I'm going to make a fool of myself. Nobody does that. If your heart's in the right place, you're never foolish. Trust me.
There you go.
That help?
Yeah, absolutely. And hey, as you always say on your voicemail, and I've known this since I was a little kid, when you leave a voicemail and you leave your number, folks, leave it 2 times. Leave it 2 times. Dad always says that. Leave your number 2 times. Well, hey guys, thanks for joining the Richey Mortgage Team podcast, powered by the Velocity team at Click and Close. Like I said, if you want more wealth of information of stuff like this, please like and subscribe to the podcast. And we're going to come back next week with some more fabulous content. And so until then, thank you for joining. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye, guys.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
Yep.
Awesome.